Alright, today we will be reviewing and comparing three entertaining but very different movie versions of Victor Hugo's classic novel Les Miserables. We will be looking at a 1935 American-made film, a 1958 French film, and the recent 2012 musical version starring some of the more well-known and modern actors. Each movie has some obvious contrasting values based on the location and the time of set, as well as different ways of condensing one of the longest novels ever into a movie that balances both audience engagement and inclusion of the main points Hugo desired to get across when writing the story. Some of the things that we will focus on in comparison to the films will be acting, screenplay, storyline, character development, type of film, and how each of these things creates a theme for the entirety of the movie. So let's start with the most important things from the book that I see as must-haves in the movies. Jean Valjean must be the main character and should develop over time in the book heavily. Hugo heavily leans on the concept of all the good characters in the book being dynamic characters that change, while the bad characters must be somewhat static and intense. In the novel, Hugo uses the light and dark metaphor. Bad characters that support the prison and societal flawed system are dark and static. Ones that oppose the system and look for change are dynamic and light. There also needs to be many underlying ways of attacking and exposing the flaws of the prison and society systems. And that social change is very unlikely, especially in the beginning as Valjean first gets sentenced to prison. We must see the change over time, not only in himself, but how he sneaks through the system unselfishly to help other people and ultimately live a life full of light and happiness. So let's get started with the 1935 film, the first one made out of these three. This movie, directed by the less-known Richard Boleslavsky, won one Oscar and starred Frederick March, who won 13 different awards including Oscars and Emmys in the film industry as Jean Valjean, Charles Laughton, a 9-time film award winner as Javert, and Cedric Harwicki, regarded as one of the best actors of early talking picture, as Bienvenu. This film was set in the 1930s in America, a time of Great Depression and between the World Wars, which explains a ton of the overall mood and value concepts throughout the movie. Let's look at what they did well. The acting was appropriate for its time, though nothing special, in my opinion. The characters showed the story that was trying to be portrayed, and at times the movie was almost maddening and depressing because of the negativity that you could feel throughout it. They also stuck to very specific concepts of the book, which makes this maybe the most enjoyable and valuable watch out of the three, in my personal opinion. The huge majority of the book was centered around Javert and Valjean. Almost all conflicts started and ended between these two. This made the theme of the movie easy to grapple with. There were very few side stories, and every element included in the 1 hour and 50 minutes was totally necessary for the sake of the entire story. Now, largely due to length, there are some questions. While Javert and Valjean were emphasized heavily, some development of largely important characters was lacking. Cosette and Fantine were present, and Valjean helped them, as the book suggests, but the movie could definitely have additions to develop them towards the overall theme of the movie more. Cosette played a much more limited role in the novel, and the Thénardiers were mentioned even less. At the same time, it's extremely difficult, I understand, to match the level of character development in a movie less than 2 hours when compared to Hugo's insane ability to write about characters for over 1,500 pages. It's almost incomparable to the novel, so let's compare it to the French film made 20 years later. The 1958 French film is a French drama directed by Jean-Paul Lachanoy, who was a member of the Communist Party and was absolutely ridiculed by other filmmakers during his time. The 1958 version was his most common work, but many contemporary critics said the movie poorly portrayed Hugo's story. Jean Gabin, a guy mostly known for theater work, played Jean Valjean, Bernard Blier as Javert, and Renée Fleur, a well-known actress in theater as well, as La Cardinal. The film had some beautiful scenes that caught our attention, and a lot of the story was quite good. However, it was over 3 hours long, and as mentioned before, the balance between adding enough to the story, yet keeping readers engaged throughout is very difficult. I thought it was too long, and there were several parts that weren't super necessary for the same themes as before. I definitely thought actors were better at portraying their roles. Jean Gabin played an excellent Valjean, and was the best of all three versions combined. I also thought Javert and Thénardier both were shown well too, and having both of them as important characters added a more intense level of conflict as opposed to Jean Valjean and the others. Also, as opposed to the other two, I thought there was less violence, especially violence centered around Valjean, as I'll talk about later. Victor Hugo makes Valjean seem as if he doesn't believe in violence, but both the 1935 and 2012 films had scenes of him being pretty violent against Javert. The film tried to put as much into the movie as possible, obviously. It was 3 hours and 10 minutes long, and the original cut was over 5 hours. The character development was better, but I thought that because so much detail was added that it took away from the straightforward point and theme of the movie. The 1935 version was better directed to me, and I thought the theme in Attack on Systems was slightly better simply because it was more direct. Both the 1935 and 1958 versions were messing with the balance as mentioned above. I personally prefer the more cut, less developed 1935 version, but oftentimes this is simply a matter of preference. As we shift to the 2012 musical, which was a much different portrayal, mostly due to the amount of money put into it. The result? 3 Oscar wins, 177 total nominations across the industry. And the director, Tom Hooper, had 35 different wins and 50 nominations from the industry, and was educated at the prestigious Westminster College in England. The film included the well-known Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, and Anne Hathaway, and was more of a Broadway-style musical that helped create emotion and intensity throughout its version of the novel. This movie was on the longer side as well, but in an interesting approach to me. The length felt almost offset by the fact that it was a musical. The singing and constant action and conflict created a balance of engagement and length that the other two versions struggled to develop. There was also definitely an effect of the high-grade actors, but I actually thought the 1958 versions of Valjean and Thénardier were still better. I thought the development of characters in this one was better than the 1935 version. It was close, but not quite to the level of understanding aspects of the novel as compared to the 1958 version. Again, I also thought there were a couple of times that Valjean seemed weirdly violent. He responded to Javert more than once violently, which contrasts Hugo's perception in the novel. When reading it, I thought Valjean was super anti-violent. That was one of the biggest themes of the entire book, representing in Hugo's mind that love always conquers violent actions. In conclusion, the 3 comparable aspects of the movie to me are balance of length and engagement, character development, and the ability of the movie to portray Hugo's thoughts and themes of the classic novel. The 1935 movie takes very specific themes and parts of the novel and portrays them purely and directly, which was most engaging and impactful to me. However, character development was lacking with every character except Valjean. The 1958 movie had by far the best acting and character development. This intensified the story and its meaning, even though it was nearly too long to stay engaging. The 2012 musical used money and big actors to create a better story and had possibly the best portrayal of the greatest amount of Hugo's ideas, and was also entertaining with the singing despite also being long. One thing I really think a version of Les Miserables movie would benefit from is an anti-violent Jean Valjean. His opposition to violence and affirmation of the power of love was so powerful in the book, and none of the movies portrayed the anti-violent man like I would have liked to have seen. The long novel, however, is impossible to balance length and engagement, and character development. There will always be sacrificing one for the others. Each movie version helps us understand Hugo in different ways, and the story has great stories and entertainment for all types of people in every generation of society.